Doug, let's talk about clarifying pathways into and through a pastor's ministry. And I'm going to ask you to explain that by first explaining what you meant when you said people come to leave. Why would people come to leave? That doesn't sound very promising.
Right.
Because pastors work so hard to get people to come.
Yes. The primary mechanism that churches use to get people to come to their church is what we would call attractional. We have good music, we have good speakers, come see us. We spend a lot of time, money, and energy on that, and there's strategies and books and seminars all about that. I'm not totally poo-hooing that. However,
people do say to me, "Oh, you got to come and hear our worship band."
Yeah, you got to brainwash your people to get them to do that and all that. But my point is, if what happens is unwittingly, people make just coming to see our show becomes the big deal, most of the deal. And so you have churches full of people who come and watch, and that's it.
You were telling me sometime back that a typical church spends 85% of their budget on the Sunday morning.
I don't know about the typical church. I'd have to look at our church and compare it to others, but there's people out there who track that kind of stuff. There's a whole magazine just for how to buy sound systems and make yourself more attractional. My point is this. Most of our thought, just like other things we've talked about in the church, we think about how to get people here. We do a lot less thinking, planning, and spending on what do we do with them if they come. And so the goal is, when we draw people in the crossroads, we want them to know you didn't just come here randomly. You're here for a reason, and we'll tell you what that is, and you came to leave because we're trying to reach this city. And, we can't do it without you. So, yeah, we're glad you came, but you're going to leave here in about 90 minutes, and by the way, we want you to leave better, and you need to help us do this job because it's so big. We can't do it without God. We can't do it without you.
So we're back to the question.
It's a different message.
So we're back to a question I asked you before. Sunday morning is not the biggest deal in...
Yeah, you've kind of sparked an idea here. Think about a pyramid. At our church, Sunday morning is a big deal at our church. But it's like the little top of a pyramid. The big part you don't see 7 days a week is this big under-the-water crossroads effort to transform people in the city. I think it's fair to say many of the churches, at least I've served in, it was the other way around. When you saw Sunday morning, you saw a pyramid upside down, and you saw mainly it. And then whatever else they were doing to transform people in their city was a little bit of triangle down here. We've just tried to flip that view and say, Sunday morning's important. It's our doorway. It's the first step on the pathway. But there's a lot more steps on the pathway. And if you listen to our pastors preach and listen to a lot of our messaging, it's come to leave. And hopefully you leave better, you leave with Christ, you leave with healing, you leave with enthusiasm, you leave with empowerment. You go follow where Christ wants you to be in this city, because we're not going to reach the city by having more people come to church.
But isn't it true, Doug, that a lot of what you're saying is that most pastors, and most pastors that you know, most that I know, don't know how to make this happen. In other words, let's just say we've got a bunch of people watching this, they're pastors, and they're saying, I would like to do that. It's not that I don't want to.
I understand. It takes some unlearning, some relearning or new learning, and the big issue is once you get this different perspective, we've been talking about wide angle versus looking too narrow at what the church does. When you take the wide angle of what God's called His people to do, we have to recalibrate and reallocate. I'm talking, how do I spend my time as a pastor? With my people, with the harvest, with partners? How do I spend our money? How much of our money do we spend on evangelism, mission, ourselves, and so forth? For example, our church, in fact, many churches, you'd be surprised, even churches that you wouldn't think are just all that aggressive, almost, I would say, many of the churches I visit in my city give 10% away. Many churches tithe their income. We consider ourselves a pretty aggressive church, and we're only at about 21%.
What are you saying, 21?
If you give me $1, I'm giving 21 cents away. It's not going to stay with us.
So what about the 21%?
Well, the typical church will try to give 8 to 10% away. We're giving 21, but our boss, our pastor, our chief shepherd, he wants to give away 50 cents. That makes all of the rest of us tremble. Believe me, it makes all the rest of us tremble. 50 cents of every dollar you take in. Now, there's benchmarks of when and how we could do it, but the fact that he cast that vision to say, folks, if we would tithe, we're not going to tithe so we can have better carpet. We're going to tithe because this city needs stuff done, and we need you sacrificially living, sacrificially giving, so we can speak into the darkness, the truth of Christ, and change things. And you know what? It takes time, people, money, programs, materials, and you hold the resource.
Okay.
And we're the channel for that.
All right. I would say that almost every church I have ever visited or attended, and I've lived in quite a few different cities, their idea of transformation is what they call revival. You know, the revivals that we read from the 1800s and maybe even some of the 1700s and maybe something in the 1900s and maybe something slightly more recent because they hear of something in a certain place down south or maybe up in Canada or somewhere. And so I mean, I've heard it many, many times. I can't tell you how many times people have said, we got to pray for revival. They're not praying for the same thing. No,
I grew up and I'm very familiar with that language, and I understand that God has shown up. I'm a somewhat of a product of the 1972 revival at Asbury, which was truly a phenomenon that broke out in a chapel and didn't end for 2 months and spread all over America.
Okay, now
I love that kind of stuff.
Okay, and I remember lots of people praying hard for it to happen again. Now,
that was a divine moment, according to Robert Coleman, who wrote the book One Divine Moment. That was a God thing.
Okay, right. All right, now
no
look.
one really scheduled that. The president of the university did not expect that to happen, but he was smart enough to get out of the way and let God do what he did for 2 months, which was transformative.
Okay, now here's my point. I have heard so many people aching to make this happen. They're trying to figure out how did it happen so we can repeat it. Meanwhile, you're talking about things people can make happen now?
Sure. Here's the thing I think about. When we try to manufacture revival, we're trying to take a shortcut. Now, let me tell you, if God wants to show up and take over my Bible study, my sermon, my thrift store, God knows my address, and he is welcome to have his way any day. But if he doesn't visit me like he did with the Mount of Transfiguration with the disciples, which that's once in, their life, if he doesn't visit with that to me, I'm okay with that. He's given me an assignment. I got plenty to do. And that means you come to leave. There's stuff out there to do. And I need my church organized to make sure when you do come, you leave better. You come for a reason, for a season. You may even come here for 3 years and go back to another church or go start a church. The goal is to reach a city, not to build up my church.
Now just think how ridiculous this can make something else sound. I've just seen so much of this. I used to be part of this. People getting together and praying to bring revival down, bring the revival fires down from heaven. But you're saying, well, listen, we have the arms and the legs, the mouth. We can do something any day we want.
Listen, I'm talking about people like my dear mom, bless her heart, who went to be with the Lord last year. I know people who pray that way, and God bless them. I love it, and I appreciate them. But I also know organizationally and methodologically, there's a little bit of a shortcut thinking. Well, if God would just show up and visit, this would all happen. He'd zap people.
Right.
And here's what I'm telling you. I think most of what Jesus did. You look at the 3 years. If you really do a study, and most of us haven't looked at the life of Christ deeply, he did a lot of seed planting. The authors selectively in the Gospel showed us events that happened later, but there's a lot of spade work done first. We should be drip, 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 drip all over our community to love and truth and incarnating evidence of Jesus Christ. That produces a cumulative effect, just like the seed and the sower and all those stories Jesus gave us. And we want Jesus to just show up and save our city.